Imagine snow falling in December 1941, but instead of shivering, Germany's generals are staring at a single intelligence report. It's not the winter they're suddenly worried about the Americans entering World War II. We're exploring how the U.S. transformed warfare from skill-based to factory-driven.
This is such a gripping pivot. I'll be joining you for a deep dive into the mindsets of these German commanders as they realized brute force and brilliant tactics were no match for America's endless army. Today, we'll unpack why industrial power changed everything.
Listeners, expect to hear about the shockwaves after America's entry, how German generals tried to adapt, the relentless U.S. production machine, and D-Day's industrial choreography. Plus, we'll ask, what happens when your enemy simply won't run out of soldiers or supplies?
Let's kick off with the moment that changed every calculation, the arrival of that intelligence report in Berlin, and what it meant for the Wehrmacht's hopes.
So, before America joined, German commanders like Halder were surrounded by maps of victories Poland, France, Greece, all conquered in lightning blitzkrieg campaigns. They genuinely believed they'd rewritten the rules of war.
Absolutely, Halder and his staff had reason to be confident. Their tactics were fast, audacious, and efficient. But the first reports from North Africa, especially Operation Torch, were unsettling. American units arrived, and although they stumbled at Kasserine Pass, their volume of equipment was staggering.
Rommel's dispatches back to Berlin started sounding less like battlefield reports and more like inventory checks. Imagine watching your enemy shrug off tank losses that would cripple your own force.
And it wasn't just numbers. The Americans seemed to treat war as an engineering problem, throwing resources at obstacles until they disappeared. That mindset would soon overwhelm even the best tactical plans.
Funny you mention engineering, because by 1943, German generals like Guderian were staring at production figures in disbelief. Germany could barely make 1,000 tanks a month, while the U.S. was producing twice that and accelerating.
The scale was almost surreal. German aircraft production peaked at 40,000 for the entire war. Americans built over 300,000. Intelligence reports kept coming: huge bomber formations, 1,000-plane raids, and replacements arriving faster than losses could be inflicted.
Kesselring in Italy felt this industrial pressure directly. After initial tactical wins at Anzio and Salerno, he saw the Americans feeding men and material into beachheads non-stop, grinding forward through sheer force rather than tactical brilliance.
He transformed Italy's terrain into a fortress, yet the U.S. artillery turned mountains into moonscapes. German divisions that would have held for years were replaced overnight by fresh American units. It was relentless, almost mechanical.
That actually reminds me of the build-up to D-Day. German commanders like Blaskowitz watched in horror as American convoys flooded English ports. Over 1 million soldiers and thousands of ships' war had become an industrial operation.
Exactly, and when Rommel saw the landings, he described them with professional horror. The Allies came ashore so massively coordinated that German defenses simply couldn't withstand the bombardments and the overwhelming numbers.
Panzer divisions counterattacked and sometimes won locally, but it was irrelevant. For every American tank destroyed, 2 more appeared. They just kept attacking, finding weak points and exploiting them with unstoppable resources.
Von Kluge, taking over after Rommel, inherited a nightmare. Outnumbered, outgunned, and strangled by Allied air superiority, German forces could barely move without being bombed. Their tactical skill just couldn't overcome the logistics tidal wave.
Moving forward, the Battle of the Bulge was Germany's last desperate gamble. Manteuffel threw his armored reserves into the breach, hoping for a miracle. For a few days, it seemed the Wehrmacht had rediscovered its old magic.
But the reality was devastating. American units bent but didn't break. Surrounded troops at Bastogne held out, supplied by airlift, and within days, the U.S. war machine pivoted and threw fresh divisions into the fight with incredible speed.
German tanks ran out of fuel. Their supply lines collapsed. Meanwhile, American tanks kept rolling, fueled by shipments from Texas refineries. Entire armies reacted in hours, doing what would have taken Germany weeks.
In the end, Model's defense in the Ruhr pocket showed the same tragic arithmetic. German soldiers rationed ammunition, while Americans expended it freely, knowing another truckload was already on its way.
So, wrapping up, Three key takeaways stand out. First, German tactical brilliance couldn't overcome America's industrial might. Second, modern warfare belonged to economies, not just armies. Third, the U.S. turned war into a production problem solved by factories, not generals.
If you want a practical lesson, study how logistics and infrastructure shape outcomes, whether in war or in peacetime. For historians, it's a reminder: technology and scale often matter more than skill. Thanks for joining us as we unpacked America's endless army and the lessons it left behind.
Keep exploring history's turning points. And remember, sometimes the most decisive battles are fought on factory floors, not just the front lines. See you next time.